Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to my presentation. I'm Justin, and I'm a designer who specializes in understanding others in their work and empowering them to express their own viewpoints. But the reason I'm here is actually to answer the age-old question, how can we include the viewpoints of diverse users? So without further ado, let's get started. Here's what I'll discuss today, including what co-design is, how it can gather information, and how it can be applied to Thrivability to show for a co-design activity which I've made for a previous client. Go through each of these items in greater detail, and hopefully you'll learn something from them. So, what is co-design? To answer this, we must drive to what design is. Design is often based around specialized individuals creating items for end users by iterating ideas and concepts until they're finished. It encompasses a wide range of areas, but trying to use everyday images and sounds to permeate our lives. If you can think of it, someone designed it. That means when designing something, we must consider not just ourselves, those who know, but how everyone interacts with it, especially if it's intended for use by those who aren't ourselves. For instance, have you ever found something that you have no idea how to use? Something that may seem obvious to one person may be incomprehensible to another, and vice versa. Alternatively, certain people may prefer to interact with something in a certain way, and if we fail to cater to this, it will likely fail its purpose. However, while many try their best to consider how their users will engage with their designs, they can miss aspects that simply don't occur to them. To this end, I'd like to discuss another approach. Co-design. Now I'm going to finally answer what co-design is. The idea behind this is shown in definition at the bottom of the slides. A dynamic, creative research approach based on partnerships, community to solve design problems. Instead of one or two people designing something, we work with the community to help shape designs. So this empowers designers to work with their users to understand their perspectives, as well as empowering them to understand the designers. And this allows both us and them to solve design problems and creating solutions that users will engage with, typically by gathering small groups of people from those who use the design into a workshop or series of workshops, which are usually no more than a couple of hours each, although this can depend on what you're trying to find out. The idea is this will gather information from them, and in some cases, we'll work with them to create ideas, concepts, even items that we use to influence the final design. Through this, it can create discussion, introduce issues of outcomes, and give it a sense of ownership in the design, increasing the likelihood of its use. So you might think, wow, this sounds great. If that's the case, why didn't everyone use it? Well, let me answer that question now. For co-design to succeed, all participants, regardless of their culture or language or anything else, should feel comfortable and be able to contribute without fear of judgment. However, there are many ways to gather information from users, but not all of them work equally. For instance, have you ever been in a situation where you felt pressure to speak of something positively, even if that thing isn't as positive as they insist it is? Evaluation activities such as ranking concepts or ideas, for example, can often result in uncomfortable or defensive participants, which is a problem because it produces less information than comfortable and engaged participants, because if people feel uncomfortable to share their thoughts, they're not going to share them, or may end up lying to ensure there is no conflict. It's this desire to avoid disagreement or avoid confrontation which can often silence discussion, especially of negative traits. So as an alternative, I looked at two approaches to gathering information from participants. One, through discussions, and two, activities. In this section, I'll discuss these approaches through examples, how they're implemented, what they did, and what I learned from them. The first approach is discussions. An example of this is a series of dialogues which the Australian Government's Department of Human Services have engaged in with local community members, organisations, and government representatives to deliver improved services and better understand community needs. These took place in several sites across the state of Victoria in Australia, each handling different subgroups. For instance, there's one workshop for older people, another for migrants and refugees, and so on, etc. So this prioritised people with pre-existing interest in creating change and motivated people primarily through allowing active discussion directly between communities and government representatives and other relevant people who can make changes within their systems. The idea is, through active discussion over multiple sessions, each site would form an action plan to move forward with changes together. Now, I'd like to discuss the other approach, which is shown here, using activities to generate discussion. So one example of this is a redesign of the youth mental health website, reachout.com. They sought to solve an issue that only 20% of young males and 30% of young females who need mental health services were accessing them. So, given their mission to provide mental health advice to youth, the site would be co-designed to define the site's goals and services, including the 5 potential concepts and goals of the site, refine them into terms that youth would use, and building communications based on the above refinements. To this end, co-design workshops run at 2 points. Early on to define potential concepts and goals for the site, and near the end to test finalized concepts. So these workshops recruit 16 to 18 members of the target audience, not including current users of the site, and is based around its user structured activities designed to encourage collaboration and contribution. In contrast to a previous example, this one said gather a random selection of users, not just those who express interest in creating change. So some examples of activities include playful ways to generate ideas, like creating your own words to describe mental health elements, which serve to establish a shared vocabulary. And another activity is actually gathering teams of people who develop their own persona based on end users, which would involve generating information about them, who they are, why they would use a service, and what they seek from the service, to be used in scenario tests later, which would compare what they seek with what the site actually provides and how it could be improved. So now, I'd like to actually compare both approaches to see which is better. But both have their benefits and their flaws. So both create discussions, but in different ways. While discussion approaches usually have people engaging in dialogues with each other, activity approaches often create discussions through activities themselves. So in our examples, the discussion approach tended to favour those with pre-existing interest in improving the department's services, while activities in this example showed a great example to engage people, especially for those who are uninterested in mental health discussions. Discussions with the department allowed for the convergence of different perspectives, which allowed for the greater discussion of issues. There's also opportunities to consider issues rather than being made to answer questions alone. The creation of action plans in particular enabled participants to attempt to improve services while considering the needs of local residents. However, they are found to be heavily dependent on participation. While some sites achieve consistently high participation levels across multiple discussions, a few had issues owing to inflexible schedules and an inability to engage with services in person. Conversely, while activities showed a greater amount of engagement, the activities need to seem relevant to the audience to be useful. If activities do not seem relevant to the design being made, participants may be more likely to disengage. One of the biggest findings is that in the department's discussions, sites where dialogue process was adapted to participant needs include the use of third parties or the gathering of smaller groups of people with similar backgrounds is actually more successful than sites who did not. This has enabled both community members and members of government and other individuals to gain a better understanding of each other's perspectives. Additionally, the need for the department members to express their work in simple terms helped generate ideas, and ultimately, many in that case saw them in a first step in solving problems, rather than being a solution in itself, and further discussions could be valuable in the future. But ultimately, both have their strengths and weaknesses. But the main aspect that these show is that both show need for audience engagement and to adapt to the audience to gather meaningful results. To this end, It's crucial to ensure approaches adapt to the audience and seem relevant to them. So now I'd like to talk about how this approach can be applied to thrivability and solutions to thrivability problems. So, given that people respond to them in different ways, to create optimal solutions, we must understand how. Now, as part of my master design course back in 2021, I created a Codesign activity to find out exactly this. But initially, it started with a simple pet peeve. Why do people litter everywhere? Why do people put stuff in bins? Why? I found that many efforts to change behaviours typically rely on 1. Providing information about correct behaviours, 2. Providing information on the consequences of failing to heed them. Unfortunately, we found it resulted in minimal behavioural changes. For instance, discussing a plastic bag ban. For any significant increase in plastic bag avoidance to occur, ban would need to be negatively reinforced through fines and the like. Otherwise, scarcely any changes to behaviour would have occurred. Additionally, another researcher found that waste sorting behaviour tended to be dictated by previous behaviour. And additionally, social influences can affect waste disposal behaviours, particularly an individual's perceptions of social norms, intentions behind their current actions, and the extent they feel in control. The implication being to understand behaviours in this field and potential effects of solutions, an understanding of previous behaviours and their social influences may be necessary. So now let me introduce you to the City of Casey Council, an outer metropolitan region of Melbourne in Australia. In 2021, they created a dedicated smart city program called the Smart Casey Launchpad to coordinate and inspire actions toward improving livability, sustainability, collaboration, and economic opportunities through technologies and new practices. Specifically, they sought to engage with people who live in the council area, working them to implement solutions for the betterment of communities, facilitate collaboration and innovative idea generation among them, and thirdly, convey the benefits of their initiatives, emphasising how they benefit the community rather than the initiatives themselves. However, as a council with many culturally and linguistically diverse members, or COUNT members, as I'll call them from now on, they sought a way to communicate their initiatives to everyone living in the council area, no matter who they are, and engage with the diverse set of communities that the council holds. So, with this in mind, I decided to expand from littering and waste sorting to sustainability and indeed thrivability. Given that perceptions of social norms are one of the major factors that were found to influence behaviours, I sought to gather this information. And to this end, I sought to create a workshop to engage and draw information on COUNT communities about their perceptions of sustainability issues and what they believed solved them. Thus, we sought to find out perceived social norms and intentions behind overseeing our actions relating to topics, to understand how members of the City of Casey Council act in relation to engaging current sustainability and thrivability programs, and why to act in those ways. And we focused on perceived social norms instead of actual social norms because it is mainly the perceptions of these social norms that influence behaviours rather than actual social norms. So, in researching co-design, I found it is particularly valuable during the start of development, as most decisions are often made near the beginning of the design process. However, success is dependent on how end users are engaged. For instance, what do you think of thrivability? How can we be more thrivable? Asking people what they seek usually produces less effective results than other methods. Instead, generative methods that encourage creativity and reflection tend to motivate ideation among participants. Structured hands-on tasks, we found, can allow an outlet for creative ideas while seeming non-threatening to participants, and tend to be more effective than whole group brainstorms or idea generation. Activities can also be helpful for people to express ideas without words, particularly with those who struggle with verbal communication or simply lack a common language. However, activities must be relevant to the context. For instance, we found that one researcher noted that in a discussion of a co-design workshop for aphasia being communication of issues from brain injury communication program, they found that a charades game was more successful in engagement than a marshmallow tower building game, as the former seemed more relevant to participants. So while co-design can uncover sustainability beliefs and behaviours, workshops must consider participant comfort and the activities undertaken to make sure that they feel comfortable and activities seem relevant. One of the biggest issues around social norms, they're often obvious. You know what's right and you know what's wrong. But what if you find someone who doesn't know how to use a knife and fork or accidentally pushes you while you're in a queue? These social norms are often clear to yourself, but not to others. This is tacit knowledge, and it's often implied. Thus, the goal is great activity that can transform this tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge. It's clearly stated and known to others. This allows him to expand upon these ideas, points, and create solutions that suit their needs, not what we think their needs are. So to this end, I wanted to answer the question, how can we use co-design to draw knowledge from members of COUD communities? So a 2015 study demonstrates the challenges co-design facilitators can face when people have difficulties in communication with each other. And there are many. The point is that for people who struggle to communicate in a common language, discussions can be difficult. Thus, I aim to resolve this by allowing participants to communicate their thoughts visually. So as part of a co-design workshop, which I've worked on with several other individuals, I devised an activity by encouraging everyone to draw based on a series of prompts. The idea is that the activity should enable and motivate everyone to participate, no matter who they are, or whether they share a common language or anything else. So, to summarize, given that the structured activities can transform tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge, we have one major question to ask. How can we ensure we uncover the tacit knowledge of COUD communities? So, the following section discusses a potential method of doing so through visual communication. I hope to discuss how I approached this, my findings, and potential improvements, so anyone can take this information and use it to find information not just in sustainability and thrivability, but their own fields. So to this end, let me introduce you to prompted drawings, an activity based on asking participants to draw images based on provided prompts, and using them to facilitate discussion. We ran two versions of this activity, one with waste management questions and another with sustainability questions, which served to test differences in response between a narrow field and a more generic field. I focused on sustainability instead of thrivability, as at the time I didn't know about thrivability, but I believe the sustainability points can be applied to thrivability. So to this end, the test involved dividing people into small groups of around 4 to 5 people with a single facilitator each, and reaching out a series of prompts one at a time, and providing participants with 30 seconds to draw each prompt, with 1 minute for the final prompt to account for the consideration of ideas. After each prompt, groups were given the opportunity to discuss the facilitators and each other about what they drew and what it represents to them. Specifically, the facilitator would ask each person to share, if they'd like, their drawings and what they mean to them, and invite others to express their thoughts as desired. So facilitators would encourage discussion but don't contribute their own points to maintain the focus on participant views and avoid accidentally stealing their thoughts. So the prompts shown are based on sustainability, with technology as a secondary topic introduced later to frame sustainability solutions and understand perceptions on both sustainability and problems relating to that, and what they believe would solve their problems. Thus, prompts start by asking participants to define a topic from a surface level, before later prompts build on previous ones and increased understanding from previous prompts. So, you may notice the first two prompts focus on a single topic, sustainability. The prompt introduces something else that can be used as a potential solution, in this case, technological solutions. Alternatively, if you want to explore a wider range of solutions, you could frame the prompt to people, governments, or even the world. For instance, we could change the third prompt to draw how people can make a more sustainable future. In this case, I believe that people would generate solutions about how those around them can be more sustainable in their lives, rather than policy changes, which you might get if you asked how the government can make a more sustainable future. So the fourth prompt would focus on a problem they perceive, while the fifth focuses on a solution based on a problem they found in their community. Note that these are not necessarily workable solutions. but simply ones that are perceived to work by workshop members based on their perspectives. So since the last prompt requires more time to allow them to consider potential solutions, we give them a minute instead of 30 seconds. We give the others 30 seconds because we want them to draw the first thing on their mind. So the idea is this activity is designed to operate at the beginning of a workshop, allowing an understanding of what and how people think about the topic, although it can operate by itself if needed. This allows participants to think deeply about issues before they expand to further discussion or solution making. It also allows an understanding of what and how people think about the topic, which allows them to think more deeply about the issue and the aspects that define their views. So by understanding how cow communities perceive technological solutions to sustainability, council can use this information to explain their benefits in a way that makes sense to them, which would benefit one of their main goals. Additionally, subsequent activities and discussions can build upon this information to create further discussion or generate solutions within community members, or even be used to educate them on solutions that might actually work and fulfill their needs. However, as this was ran during the COVID-19 pandemic, this had prevented any discussion with KC community members, including those who lack a common language. Thus, we end up running the activity with students within our course. As a result, findings may demonstrate what can be found for activities rather than their effectiveness on the attended audience. We ran 2 tests, one based on waste management questions and another based on sustainability questions. And in both tests, we found that discussions around waste management tended to spawn discussion around consumer-facing waste infrastructure, such as bins. So sustainability discussions, in contrast, tended to focus on communal and future impact, particularly in terms of preserving natural environments, which implies that prompts play a major role in framing discussions. While the activity enabled people to discuss their thoughts, we found that issues in running this online, most notably bad internet connections, preventing participants from understanding instructions, and a tendency for members to explain their drawings over discussing each other's drawings, particularly in one of the sessions which had a larger group. Additionally, many activities tend to produce similar answers, though just seem to mitigate in tests where tutors participated. They often expand discussions with their own perspectives. Therefore, he suggested a wide range of participants and small group sizes seem to be vital for facilitating meaningful discussions. Now, I found the activity allowed people to define sustainability and perceived issues related to them in their own words. However, as participants usually kept discussions within prompts, these often play a major role in shaping the context of the activities and what is discussed. Sustainability prompts, therefore, ensured activities appear relevant to participants in a sustainability co-design workshop. For any other topic, prompts should be changed to explicitly focus on the discussion topic. For example, the first prompt could be changed to draw what thrivability means to you for thrivability, or draw what smart cities mean to you for smart cities, or any other topic for anything else. I realized that people remain focused on the presented topic rather than expanding from it, owing to people being reluctant to diverge from prompts, or said prompts priming individuals to ignore aspects outside of them. Additionally, it seems that prompts that appear to relate to a topic often play a large role in softening disengagement. Co-design activities are often enriched by more diverse viewpoints. However, many workshops often have difficulties with engaging people, or taking cultural and linguistic differences into account. It means that activities need to be adjusted to help them engage people. They can allow more individuals to discuss their views. By finding a common method of explaining for participants to discuss with, and allowing them to define their own issues within given topics, people can feel more comfortable in co-design workshops. So, by reducing obstacles to communication in workshops, facilitators can gather thoughts from more people. This means that issues are more likely to be discovered, potentially resulting in better outcomes. Owing to COVID-19, our activity tests run entirely online, meaning offline effectiveness has not been tested at all. Running activities in person may result in unexplained issues or benefits that are not discussed. Additionally, these tests were conducted with small groups of around 5 people at most. While the efficacy of these activities within small groups is known, activities may need to be worked for large groups, such as dividing people into smaller groups, or adjusting activities to operate more effectively, perhaps through additional facilitators or extending the time given for prompts. So I found that this activity can generate discussion You could not test this effectiveness in the intended context. So if you seek to run this activity for your groups, make sure you change prompts to draw out what you wish to discuss. Lastly, here to reference the presentation. I hope to place these in a document or other location where it can be more easily accessed. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure having you, and I hope you learned something from this. Thanks for listening.